Well, hi there, and welcome to the Director's Cut with commentary for The Brass Are Going Where? So I'm Scott McDonald. I'm the director, cinematographer, editor, basically the guy who owned the movie camera that we used to make this film. So I got cast in those roles and never appeared on camera for this. Now, when I started this project back in, 50 years ago now with my friends, we all got together and had watched the special on TV for the Tijuana Brass because, we were into the music scene at the time, and especially since we were, brass players, it's like, oh, okay, well, we're all into the TJB, let's watch this. Now, we had already done a little movie, a war movie we called it, that we put together. And eventually I'll have that digitized as well once I receive it. It's actually all the way in California, so hoping to get it here soon. Now, this opening scene was shot on Interstate 14 heading south. We were on our way down to Ventura Beach to shoot the scenes that you'll see later on in the movie. And so, since I didn't have my driver's license yet, being a passenger, I decided, well, I'll crank up the camera and take some pictures here, and maybe we can work this into the movie. And then once I got the footage back, I said, well, I'll use this for the opening scene. Didn't really have a plan for this movie. I mean, it was all in our heads. We were throwing out ideas, spitballing as we went along as to what we were going to do for the movie. We knew that eventually we would have a semi-synchronized soundtrack on a reel-to-reel tape that we were going to borrow from Kurt's dad. Kurt Kunzler played Herb Alpert in this movie. And so we would throw out, well, we could do a scene that would have this song in the background. So what I've done in this version of the movie is I've put in little cues as to what music we had thought about and music that we had planned to put in. Like for this scene here, which was the first scene we actually shot for the movie. And this was over in front of Kurt's house. Kurt's walking across the street. He's playing Herb Alpert. And this is Cal Elliott coming down on his motorcycle. Now, Kurt and Cal and myself and a good friend of ours, Jim Fizell, the four of us were all trumpet players in the band. We were actually the four trumpet players for the stage band as well. And we used to get together all the time on weekends, usually over at Cal's house for lunch, a afternoon fright movie that was on one of the channels from Los Angeles, and practice our trumpets, of course, and then play a little bit of pool. So during that time of getting together, we started planning out, well, let's do this movie. And I decided that when I went to go edit this, I was going to make these cards that go in for where we had conversation, much like in the old silent movies. I never got around to doing that. But now with the advent of the new technology, I can add these things in there for this movie to give you an idea that we did have some sort of dialogue going on. So if you watch closely, you see that they're talking, they're carrying on a conversation. And the conversation is about, hey, I'm getting a band together. And of course, Cal, who's playing poncho trumpet, realizes that, hey, you've got a trumpet there. Well, if you know anything about musical instruments, that's not really a trumpet. That's a cornet, cousin to the trumpet. That's my cornet, student model, that I started playing back when I was in between 4th and 5th grade in summer school, and was actually the cornet that I played in dance band as well, because it was the only musical instrument that I owned. Now, I was playing French horn in high school band during this time because we had too many trumpet players. But I made a deal with the band director, and I said, well, I want to audition for stage band and be given a chance to possibly play if I'm good enough. And he said, okay. So I played trumpet in stage band, and I played French horn in marching band. But I digress. So for this scene, I just told the guys, well, act like, you're talking about we're getting a band together, and we'll, go with that. And so they said, okay, because I figured, well, I'll do title cards later, which, well, actually never happened. And then we thought about this scene here, which happens the same day. A few hours later, you can see the sun shifted. It's later in the day. Warren Mizell, his first name was Fred, but he went by Warren in high school because his dad was a Fred as well, so he was named after his father. And so we called him Warren. I guess that was his middle name. Rumor is he's gone back to being called Fred, but we didn't know him as Fred. We knew him as Warren. But he volunteered to dress up and play Cal's girlfriend, Mame. And then the idea was, well, we'll put the music Mame that the Tijuana Brass did on the semi-synchronized soundtrack in the background, you know, just as a musical cue joke. So he had the get-up. I'm not going to take that any further. I don't know if that was his mom's wig or where he got it, but, you know, he put the costuming together, and Cal went over and picked him up. They came back over, and we shot this scene. And yeah, Warren was quite the ham here, hamming it up to be the femme fatale for this show. In fact, you can see that Cal had a hard time keeping a straight face during this. So we didn't worry about it. It's like, well, we'll just leave that in there. We're not doing a serious movie. It's a spoof. So yeah, if you break character, well, that's okay. We're not going to say anything. So this was actually the very first shooting we did, and I didn't, as I mentioned, I didn't have a driver's license. So Warren was our primary transport going around. He was a senior that year. I was learning how to drive, but I wouldn't get my license until we finished shooting all of this film. So it's like, all right, well, now we get to go out on location, and where are we going to go? So the location that's coming up here pretty soon is out at a place called Tropico Gold Mine in Roseman, California, which is north of Palmdale in the Antelope Valley. It's up at the northern edge of the Antelope Valley. And they had all these neat buildings out there that we could use as our background. Now, when we went out there, we didn't call ahead or anything. We just showed up and said, hey, would you let us shoot a little movie? It's a high school film project we're doing. And they went, oh, sure. They normally charge admission, but they didn't charge us. They just said, hey, yeah, sure, go ahead, high school film project. Yeah, we like that idea. And as you can see, they really weren't that busy that weekend. There was nobody else around, so we had the place to ourselves and set up and faked all these music scenes. I don't remember if the guys were actually playing or not. We were just, you know, like everything else, just faking it. Move your fingers. We'll throw some music in the background, and we just sort of went with that. Of course, we can't use the real Herb Alpert music in the background for this now because of, you know, we can't pay the royalties and, you know, copyright laws and everything. So that's why I just threw in that mariachi music in the background for this. So we spent the day out there shooting and had some fun. This took some time to do. The little stop motion animation. That was our most interesting part of this. That whole scene that just took a few seconds there actually took about a good half hour or so to shoot, with the guys on the ground and then scooting forward and, you know, changing hats to make the hats move as they went along. And then Kurt here on the back of the Southern Pacific caboose that's on the grounds of the property. Notice that it says keep off. We sort of ignored that, and the people didn't kick us out. They said, you know, they let us do our thing out there, so we had some fun. Now in a moment here you're going to see Kurt's younger sister Carla. There she is, dressed up as an Indian maiden. So there's Cal. He was out fishing for, and that's what he caught. Another quick prop. We didn't carry a fishing pole with us. We just found a stick and had some string somewhere and made a quick fishing pole and used that for the scene. And then we just threw this in there. We were just goofing around and decided that we'd have this shootout. I don't remember if that was in the special or not, but we decided, well, we'll do this trumpet shootout. And there goes Poncho Trumpet out the window. And this scene came around because while we were out there on the grounds of the Tropical Gold Mine, there was this, Boot Hill Cemetery. So it's like, well, how can we work that into this movie? And it's like, okay, well, we'll do this shootout, and then we'll play like we're going to go bury him over there. Well, we couldn't actually, do any digging, or it was all fenced off, and we respected the property rights of the people that owned this place. So I did this little panning scene just to grab some footage. And the guys went around and climbed up onto the top of the rock that's above the little cemetery. And we shot this scene. And of course, you see that Poncho, who just, took it in the shorts, is now up there, just propped up. Didn't get buried. He's just sitting there, sort of a Weekend at Bernie's thing that we did many years before Weekend at Bernie's. It's like, we'll just prop the dead guy up here. Oh, and then he started moving. It's like, no, Cal, you're dead. You're not supposed to move. Well, he woke up from the dead, so we went with it. It's like I said, it was a spoof. We were having fun. We didn't care. So it's like, now that'll finish out this scene. I'll pan back down to the cemetery, and then we'll move on to something new. Well, something new was then to go out to Elizabeth Lake, which is out west of Palmdale, up in the foothills. And they let us, once again, this is another weekend, we showed up. This was Cal's idea because his family knew some people out there, and he said, well, we can go out to Elizabeth Lake and we'll shoot out there. They'll let us on the grounds. So we did, and they had this little zoo out there, so we went out and visited the animals and decided to just shoot the scene there. And you can see the kids were sort of wondering, like, well, what are you guys doing? It's like, oh, well, we're making a movie. And they had this bear there, that poor guy, caged up in a small cage, and they gave us marshmallows and said, yeah, you can squeeze the marshmallows through the cage, and he loves them. He'll just, take them with his tongue. And we're like, oh, okay. This is back before we really started thinking about how we treat animals, I guess. This was back, in the 70s. So we were just kids, it's like, well, he's a bear, he's in a cage. We'll give him some treats and, play with him. Who thinks about going out and playing with a wild animal? But he was a cute guy. And then they had this raccoon that was fun to get his attention. And I told Kurt, I said, hey, put the mouthpiece up there, see if he'll lick it, or make it look like he's playing, and we'll throw some music behind this as well. So and then they had this horseshoe pit, and we said, hey, let's play horseshoes with the instruments. Of course, we didn't actually throw them, but a little bit of camera trickery here, just to throw this silly scene in there because, well, we wanted to fill it out. So now here we are down at Ventura Beach. This is where we were heading when we were in the cars in the early part of the movie. And we have a few extra people that came along on this because, well, we're going down to the beach. So anytime you said you're going down to the beach for the weekend, you get a bunch of your friends together. And so it's like, well, let's start off, go out there and run along the beach, because there was a similar scene in the special where I guess there are horses, horseback, galloping along the beach. And of course, we didn't have horses, but we just figured, well, we'll just do this foot race. When you know it, years later, the movie Chariots of Fire would come out. So if I was to slow this down and put it in slow motion and put the Chariots of Fire theme behind it, well, we had the idea, before they came out with the movie. But anyway, we were just kids goofing off. And of course, you have to have another femme fatale in the movie, pretty girl on the beach. And so we thought, well, we'll have all the guys come up and, start talking to her like, they're, hitting on her for a date or something. And, we'll put the Herb Alpert music, This Guy's in Love with You, in the soundtrack in the background. So the guys were like, okay. So we had them all lined up, outside the camera frame, and they all came up one by one and, struck up a conversation with Priscilla. Priscilla was in the band too. She played flute. So you can see these are all band member geeks going out on a weekend making a movie. So and then Cal comes along. So Pancho Baritone told to take a hike, and then Pancho Trumpet comes in and he starts hitting on the young lady. And I don't remember what they were talking about, but they were cracking Priscilla up. She was laughing, which was perfect. This is Warren's younger brother. I forget his name. Shameful of me. He was a couple years behind me in high school. He was also a budding cinema photographer. He had done some movies and some stop motion animation, which was really cool. So he wanted to come along, so we're like, sure, come along. We'll put you in the movie, And then our saxophone, Pancho saxophone, with his shades, he always had his shades on, being so cool. And of course, we had to carry the kit to make up Kurt look like Herb Alpert, with the Herb Alpert wig that we made from a Halloween costume wig, and sideburns that we made and actually glued to the side of his face with white glue, so it'd be easy to peel off. And we carried that makeup kit with us wherever we went. And so now you're going to see real dedication to filmmaking with the guys, taking them down. And I don't remember if we brought a change of clothes or not, or if we planned on getting wet, but being teenagers, we didn't care. We're going back up the desert. We'll dry off in the car before we even get back home, because, well, all the seats in the car were vinyl. Yes, and that's my cornet going into the ocean water. So when I got home that night, I cleaned it up really, really good, because, well, I had to be able to play it on Monday in dance band. And so we just did some candids. Okay, act like you're going to go throw her in the water or something. And he's dejected and decides that, well, that's it. That's, I'm done here. And we basically just decide to come up with some sort of ending for it. Like I say, we didn't have a script, weren't sure where we were going. We were making this stuff up as we went along, and it's like, well, you already got the cornet wet, so might as well go and just douse it really good. So here goes our hero off into the sunset, and that brings us basically to the end of the movie. Now, after I originally got this edited up, we got everybody together and we had a screening of it, and everybody got to see what I had put together on film. And we had the soundtrack done up, but you know, everybody's like, well, we know what the music is in the background. So we had fun, just even though it wasn't totally synchronized. And I threw this on the end of it here because unfortunately our good friend Cal passed away back in 2007. So back in the day we called ourselves M&M Productions. That was for Mizell and McDonald, and that was me.